Thank you, everyone. Just as a background, my 9 to 5 is basically working with asylees from Egypt. So I'd say in the last decade, I've probably spoken with over 1,000. So I definitely have a good gauge of what's happening on the ground there and what the concerns are of the people that are choosing to flee Egypt, and the reasons why they're choosing to flee Egypt. Today's topic is the kidnapping and forced conversion of Christian women in Egypt, as well as minors. In the last decade, we report that there's over 500 Christian women or girls that have disappeared, kidnapped, and forced to convert to Islam. Now, these are very rough numbers. They're probably much, much more than that. And this doesn't, of course, include attempted kidnappings, which you can't even put a number on that. You can't even put a number on that. The issue is widespread. I've noticed that it happens in all parts of the country, from Cairo to Alexandria, to the foreign areas. It's everywhere. If you look to social media, you'll see cases popping up this year, unfortunately. Every other week or every week, sometimes you'll see a family pleading to get their daughter back. Facebook is one of the main mechanisms that that people from Egypt tend to use because they don't get any help from the police. So they figure, all right, let me put my plea out there and see if the pressure from the public will help me bring my daughter back. And it has worked. And it has worked in certain cases. They put the picture out there, what happened in quick summary, and please help us. Obviously, these people, the first thing they do is go to the police. Although they're not helpful, but it's the first thing a person would do instinctually speaking. That's where they tend to go. In some cases, police refuse to issue a report. And in rare cases where they do issue a report, they won't even give the family the report number. Fast forward, in some cases, girls are actually returned after much public pressure. They just suddenly reappear, which leads you to logically conclude that security officials knew where these girls were all the time. Girls reappear. The security officials know who the offenders are, but at the end, you see 0 prosecutions, 0 arrests. So I challenge anyone to find 1 arrest and 1 prosecution for one of these cases in the last decade. Although it's something we hear about consistently, it's in the media. Coptic communities are constantly asking for help. Church leaders, there was one bishop that was interviewed recently in one of the articles we had posted on our website, saying that in his area alone, 15 girls had disappeared. No prosecutions, no arrests. So these kidnappings happen in many different forms. So you have the women that disappear right off the street on their way to school, on their way to church, on their way to work. And then you have the other category that's deceived, fraud, lured by their kidnappers. And in either case, it's the same. The Coptic woman is kept captive. Occasionally, you get a video online of the woman under duress, clearly stating that she had converted to Islam. The government quickly issues within days a ID card and a conversion certificate, which means obviously they're complicit and they're also working along with the kidnappers and providing that support. So it's a network. It's not just the kidnappers that are at fault, but it's the police that refuses to take a report. It's the security officials that know where she is and fail to do anything about it after the girl reappears. And then it's the others who are participating, issuing the IDs, the conversion certificates within the religious community and the government offices. So unfortunately, even though the problem has permeated into all these different areas, we still haven't been able to find a solution. Government refuses to acknowledge that there's a problem. Refuses to acknowledge. First thing you have to do is acknowledge. After you acknowledge, then you begin to address. So they need to acknowledge so that we can begin to put programs or mechanisms in place to protect this minority. These are the indigenous people of Egypt. These are the indigenous people of Egypt. And these are tactics that the majority and Islamists use to try and reduce their numbers and wipe them out and weaken them even further. And the government, complicit in what they're doing, weakens the minority even more, making them feel hopeless and helpless in this kind of environment. Also, programs, I think, are very important. we don't have any programs for these women that are retrieved or for their families. Lots of times, these families need to flee where they were, where the crime took place, because they can't remain there for a variety of reasons. Threats, fear of harm to the other daughters or the other female members, because there were no repercussions or prosecutions in relation to the crimes that occurred. So, I'm happy that we're here today, because one of the first things we need to do is educate the public on what's happening in Egypt, educate people on the plight of Christians in Egypt. And the second thing is we need to start putting pressure on Egypt, our government, with their counterparts in Egypt, do what they can to put pressure, bring attention to the matter in front of the UN. I'm very grateful that the UN Rapporteur is here today, because I'm sure, we'll be talking in the future and finding ways to perhaps communicate that message to the Egyptian government. Hey, it's pretty strange that we don't even have one arrest, one prosecution for all these kidnappings and these forced conversions. There needs to be a change, and I'm glad that we're here to talk about it.